Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest edition of Seniors Views Then and Now. Tonight's overall topic is technology then and now, how things have changed, and our guest tonight is an expert on communications, technology, and security systems, and a great communicator himself. Mark Morris was born in Chatham. He was raised in Maidstone and Essex. He attended Essex High School, where he was elected student council president in 1976. And Mark has enjoyed a sales and marketing background with what was originally called Kel Communications, also known around here as Kelcom, and Security One for 36 years. As a manager, he has seen the evolution of such earlier technologies as telephone answering services, voice and numeric pagers, and cellular phone equipment, including that brick device that if you're old enough, you held it to your head. And as Mark says, some people think it caused cancer, but we've evolved from that. So welcome to our webinar, Mark Morris. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Rob.
I've eagerly anticipated this because there's a lot of questions I have, and they go back to my early days here in Windsor. But first, about you. How did you get started in the world of communication devices? What prepared you for it?
Well, I originally was working for a pharmaceutical firm in Windsor, worked all three shifts, got a feel for the industrial setting in Windsor, and quite honestly didn't care for it. And so I would go up to accounting, particularly on the midnight shift, and on an old electronic typewriter, I would type out resumes, and I sent one to Vince Auchinasic from KEL Communications. And he hired me to sell phone systems. That was the time when 1985, when Bell was deregularized, and now other companies could sell phone systems. And the Friday before I started, he said, up till now, everybody has sold a product and pagers or beepers on the side. We think we could sell pagers with a full-time guy. And he asked if I would do that. And I agreed to do that. And that was my early start.
Now, we'll talk about pagers in a minute, but in your bio, you talked about Windsor, telephone answering services. This is
Yes.
something that I don't think people really think about these days as it was back in the 60s and 70s. What happened with that first?
So part of the pager idea was kind of paired with a telephone answering service. And that was an office on Goyo Street, just across from the Bell office. Most answering services back then, because everything was literally hardwired from one building to another. So you had to be close to a Bell CO or a central office. And there we had a small office that we had bought, Kelcom had bought out of receivership. And this kind of tied to pagers because this was great for a plumber who was out in the field all day. And we could literally answer his phone if he had it in the shop or an office. We could answer when he wasn't there, and we could act as his receptionist, take a message, and then we could page him to call the customer or call us for details. And it really worked kind of hand in hand in the ability for small business owners to be able to practice their trade, but be able to communicate to customers. This involved all sorts of different customers. We did custom brokers so that if a truck driver got stuck at a border somewhere, he could call in. We could actually cross connect him, which means we would call a customs person at home, wake them up in the middle of the night and say, we've got Fred, he's stuck at the Buffalo border. Can you walk him through how he's going to get through customs? And we would connect those two. And it literally was the old cord board that Lily Tomlin would use, where she was connecting directly into a cord board.
And when you did that, I remember going back to, it must have been the late 60s, early 70s, where you could get a wake-up call from an answering service.
Yes, yeah, that was
a gimmick, like, and Checker Cab used to do that too for free, just so you'd memorize their number to call them for cabs.
correct. Yeah, we'd set a timer, and we'd have a handful of people that were not morning people, and they wanted assistance and couldn't trust an alarm clock. So they wanted us to call, and if they didn't answer, we had to call again until they woke up and thanked us for getting them up at the ungodly time of 6 or 7 a.m. so they could get to wherever they needed to get to. But yeah, that was a little service. I think we offered it for $12 or $15 a month, and it was a small part of that business.
Now, I looked up, I told you about this, I looked up the history of pagers. And I don't expect you weren't back when this started. In 1921, the first pager I found in the history of pagers was the Detroit police had a pager-like device in one car, in a police car in 1921. And they used the radio waves to page the police calls, what became a police radio, I guess, later on. But that's the first recorded one I've found in history. And then there was a guy named Al Gross, who was born in Toronto but grew up in Cleveland, who had like 16 patents for pagers, and he actually perfected walkie-talkies for the Second World War and the Korean War. And he was a Canadian-born guy. I never heard of the guy before until I looked up this history. And he had 16 separate patents just for pagers. And but what they said was they really peaked in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So that brings into your time. And by the 90s, there were 60 million pagers worldwide.
Oh, that was certainly the peak of our pager business, was probably in the 90s. And we had graduated from when I started in 1985 with simply a voice pager. It came with a charger. It had a rechargeable battery. We rented them for the most part. They were pretty pricey back then, probably $500 or $600. But we rented them for $32 a month, including a $25 deductible insurance. Which for towing guys that were crawling under trucks and stuff, they would burn through pagers about once a quarter. They would smash it or damage it or crush it or whatever they did to it. But we started with voice pagers, where I would call a local Windsor phone number, which was a direct recording. You would hear, I would leave a voice message, and within 60 seconds, you would hear my message on this little box, the pager, and people's eyes lit up. This was long before cell phones, and it was just like magic, because how could it just go through the airwaves like that and you'd hear a voice at the other side of it? So it was remarkable. And then we graduated from voice pagers into numeric, and most importantly, alphanumeric, where now we have operators that can send you a paragraph of information. So I want to call Rob Miller at his house at 123 Main Street, and he's upset because the plumbing you fixed last week is broken again, and he needs a call by 10 o'clock. And here's his phone number, and here is his neighbor's phone number, and you could send all sorts of information. And it was critical for a lot of businesses to get that information timely and stay ahead of their competitors.
And everybody from that era remembers their doctors having pagers.
Yes. Yeah, doctors were, hospitals wanted to reach them. A lot of times it was hospitals communicating to them or to us. A lot of times we would answer doctors' offices, and so the office would call us and say, hey, you have to get a hold of Dr. Miller, and we'd have his home number and his cottage number, and we would track him down again to cross-connect them, because the hospital might need some valuable information about a patient.
And for the longest time, they remained popular just in hospitals, did they not?
Well, I think that's certainly where they started. We had a very slim charging voice pager that was kind of the high end pager, and that was almost exclusively used by doctors, as opposed to the clunky one that the plumber would carry.
I see. And I have here that BlackBerry introduced two-way pagers with a keyboard in the mid-90s. How did that change things?
Well, that was the beginning of the cellular era, where you had the big box portable phones, and it moved into a kind of a graduated system where you could have a phone and a keypad, so you could kind of do both. And again, I remember reading articles extensively that said, don't worry, the cellular network will not affect the pager business. And by goodness, the early 2000s, the number of pagers used dropped dramatically, because why would I need to call and leave you a message when I can call you directly and talk to you directly? And of course, they were pretty pricey. Original phones were $4,000 to $5,000. The cell phone, or the car phone, as they were called, had a box that went under the seat of your car. We had to have technicians that would run cabling through the interior of your car to an antenna, that little pigtail that used to be at the back window. And they, you were paying so much a minute. And it was very expensive, but that opened things up to real estate people and lawyers and all sorts of individuals and different businesses that, could afford that type of technology.
I remember when I started in radio in the 70s, we had a car radio at CKWW, and we thought we were just on top of the tech world, and we were carrying pagers at the same time.
Yeah.
Because the phones were attached to the car. You couldn't bring the phone with you then. There was no wireless, portable.
Correct.
Unless you were a bodybuilder and you could bring this big battery with the phone.
Correct, yeah.
So I'm sure I've used every one of those products over the years.
If you have opportunity, anyone is welcome to stop in at our offices on Eugenie. We have a little museum on the second floor. It includes one of the original cord boards from the answering service. But we have got a whole array of pagers and cell phones that were used over the years. And you're right, Rob, probably 20% of them, you had them on your hip at one point.
Now, I still see ads for companies that restore pagers. So are people still using them?
Well, there's limited networks that they're used today. There is, last I heard, 1,000 to 1,200 units being used in Windsor, but I think they're used as a very basic technology, simply to beep you or alert you that your employer needs you to call in ASAP. It's probably part of their employment agreement that they're on call 24/7, and used a lot in hospitals and things like that. But rather than me provide you with a cell phone and have to pay a cell phone monthly fee, I can put a beeper on you for $50 a year and just alert you, I need you to call the office, and you need to do so within the next 30 minutes.
So let's start with the first. You mentioned the first cell phones by Motorola and others. Talk about the bricks we were just talking about.
Well, the original network was called Cantel. I remember when we did the big premiere in Windsor, and we rented Willestead Manor, and we all had tuxes, and the colors for Cantel were a beige and red. So we all had beige tuxedos with red bow ties, and we invited everybody that was connected to business and owned business. And I recall, I can't think of his name, but he was the former head of Parks and Rec for City of Windsor. And he needed to communicate and wanted to make a cell phone call to someone in China. And we made that phone call from one of these cell phones, but it would have been like a Motorola brick that he would have held. And again, just amazing to have a crisp, clear call and not attached to a cable, completely wireless, and talk to someone anywhere in the world.
And what year was that again?
Oh, goodness. I'm thinking that was
Mid 80s?
probably late 80s. Yeah,
Late
1990, somewhere in that range.
Because I remember when they banned, for a while, pagers were being used by drug dealers. And then they banned them in the high schools. I remember that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rob. We used to get court orders and subpoenas and things where they wanted to have a second pager on the same number so they could track the drug dealer stuff.
Really?
And with cell phones as well, that sometimes the police would come, undercover guys, because they needed to get more information on drug dealers in particular.
Yeah.
It was cops and robbers stuff, just like TV. It was one of the fun parts of your job.
Did they want the phone records or the pager records of these guys?
All the time.
And they'd subpoena them, get a court order, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, they had to legally come through a way of doing it. Before the Privacy Act even became that, we just had to do it within the legal system. But yeah, that was part of the process, and we assisted police where we could. And of course, they were one of our bigger customers because all of the drug squads, Vice Squad, a lot of the street,
the Mounties.
A lot of them had pagers and cell phones and things like that.
Oh, wow. See, that's something I wasn't expecting. That's not in the history of these pagers that you read.
Yeah, it's the stuff in between, runs in between the lines of what happened.
But of course, I guess the revolution began in the 90s with the finally getting public access to the internet, which had existed previously for the military, and then it was open to the public.
Yeah, and like any other industry or any other device, or as technology improves, they're able to mass produce it, and that's why today, of course, you get a free phone, and you're paying $50 a month for service. Where, when this first started, it was not unusual to spend $4,000 to $5,000 to install it in your vehicle and pay $1 a minute to use it. And we had customers that had $1,200 a month phone bills.
Wow. Did you just cater to businesses because I'll start with that direct question. Was it just businesses, or did you have private, just individuals?
Pagers or cell phones?
Cell phones, yeah.
Yeah, cell phones was consumer and in business markets. So as the price came down, it's become more reasonable, as we got away from the brick phone, as we got away from higher costs, we certainly moved into that consumer marketplace where normal average people could now afford to have a phone and use it for business purposes, but it's really fun to be able to call ahead and talk to friends and all that sort of thing. So that's where we're at today. Is now very few people have a home phone line because everybody has a cell phone. Yes.
Well, I'll talk about that. I'm one of the dinosaurs still has a home phone. And it's because of another part of your business, which we'll get into in a few minutes, the security part.
Sure.
But you said that the internet changed things. Is it because the equipment became more lighter, digital, that kind of stuff? Like we had the flip phones, then we evolved from the flip phones to the, whatever Steve Jobs could think of.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know that the internet had a direct impact on cell phone usage. I think that was, again, just the evolution of the technology, where they were able to do wider networks. They were able to produce bigger networks, and then competition took in. Now you've got several networks and you've got to compete to be a better deal than the other guy. So I think internet probably had a minimal impact on the cellular technology.
But tell me, you said there was, well, you haven't said it tonight, but when we were speaking before, you talked about how I think the deregulation of like Bell lost its monopoly, and that sort
Yes.
of opened the market to everybody.
Right.
Did it not? Including some American companies that
Correct.
got Canadian frontmen to start their companies over here.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that back then, Bell Canada, if you were a business and you wanted a phone system, your option was Bell Canada, period. And then in 1985, somebody wisened up and thought, well, this is kind of silly. We should open it up for other people to be a provider and supplier of phone systems. And that's where you got companies like Mitel and AT&T and all sorts of things that grew into, and again, the competitive nature of manufacturing, you improved on price of systems, and technology just improves on technology.
Right. And the names, like you said, there was an irony to like your company started with one company that was absorbed by another company that ended up being, didn't you end up with the same company only under a different name, that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, Kelcom, or I think it had to do with Kent Essex Lambton Communication, was just a small radio company when Vince took on a young high school student, Reiner Newman, as his partner. And then Reiner went through Waterloo University and became an engineer. And the two of them took that small company and then moved into the telephone space and would sell telephone systems, and then fax, photocopiers, continue with radio technology, moved into pagers, became a Cantel franchise, if you will, or dealer. And along the way have acquired some small communication companies and eventually reduced or changed our brand from KEL Communications to Kelcom. And it operates today as an umbrella company with several divisions and different products and services throughout southwestern Ontario.
And we jumped right into the newer technology, but what I should have started with was their original mission was marine radio, was it not?
Yeah, Vince Auchinasik, that's a whole episode, and we should create a movie on that. Vince came over from Czechoslovakia, was very basic English, washed dishes at the Elmwood Casino back then. And his background was communications. So he would get on a freighter in Windsor and work on those radios on the freighters up until Sarnia, and then have to get a ride back to Windsor. And he was able to grow that little bit of a business into what became Kelcom.
Yeah,
very humble beginnings.
That's quite a history.
Oh, it's a remarkable story of him escaping from his homeland, which was a communist country, with a wife and a small baby boy on his back, and just remarkable. Landed in Windsor with $50 in his pocket. And we've heard these great stories of people coming from other lands to escape whatever they're escaping, and have the ability and desire to do well. And Vince was a very motivational individual.
Yes, and I worked with him at the Elmwood. I was a busboy. I used to bring the dishes to him in the kitchen when he was.
That's such a small world.
He was learning English at the time, and I had no idea he was the same guy who went to Kelcom.
Yeah. Oh, you wonder where people move on in the different chapters of our life. But Vince went on to grow a company that had well over 100 employees in different departments and different different technologies, and he thrived, was good with customers, and just did a great job. He passed away just about a year or two ago on his sailboat, as a matter of fact. He semi-retired and enjoyed traveling the world.
Yes, he was a good guy. I remember him fondly.
Yes.
So I jump around from time to time with history, so I got us off the rails. But now back to technology.
Yes.
How has it changed? Like, we still have a whole new industry for you to talk about, using your life as the evolution of communication technology. But before we leave what we've talked about, pagers, cell phones, internet, how do you see how it's changed in more recent years?
Well, I just think the floodgates have opened. I think now that with the internet, Facebook, and Instagram, and all the stuff that we're getting into, we're seeing now some of that negative effect of influence that can happen subconsciously, where you can have a conversation about something and then go to your news feed and you've got ads coming up from
Right.
my wife's talking about, I should probably get over to a normal drugstore and upgrade some of my makeup stuff. And within minutes of her being online, just kind of checking out prices, now she's flooded and inundated with ads for that product. And so it's all the logarithms and all the way technology has advanced that it's keeping track of what we do and what we do, where we spend our money. And I think it's really gone through the roof. And the scary thing is, you just wonder where it's headed next.
Yes. The thing I wonder about the most is the micro marketing, which is what I think you're talking about.
Yes.
But they also use it in politics.
Yes.
To an algorithm records what you read and what you're interested in, and suddenly you're getting a million articles, as you said.
Yeah.
Not just ads, you're getting articles, propaganda, if you will, about what you've been researching.
It's subliminal messages. I mean, we laughed about, at some point, they were trying to sneak in little images into a video clip that would make you thirsty and want to drink Pepsi or something. And I think they've mastered it now. It's not so much subliminal as far as video, but they've come to a point where they can track what your interests are, and that comes about in what shopping habits you have and where you're going to spend your next dollar.
Well, that leads me into the next question, which is, and something that seniors need to be most cognizant of, it's the privacy issue.
Yeah.
How do you protect your privacy in this world of conflicting media and algorithms that are tracing your every move?
Well, and I think you just have to be very, very cautious, because unfortunately, as technology has improved, the bad guys have adapted to this as well, and they're eager to scam, particularly seniors, out of all of their hard-earned money they've spent their whole life earning. So be very, very cautious that people are not calling and asking for your bank account number over the phone, and your social insurance number, and all of this stuff. That does not happen through phone calls and internet. So you have to be very cautious that even Facebook, your account can get hacked so easily, and they're trying to access more people's accounts. And so cyber protection is monumental, not only for big business, but even for your own home computer as well.
And what advice would you give people? What should they do to ensure this?
Well, definitely talk to your provider about what they're offering for cyber protection, but then talk to a reliable computer company. and have that full conversation with what more can I do, and potentially what can I invest in that is going to protect my home security from people tapping into what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
Now, let's go back to now we're tracing through your career. When Motorola stopped making pagers in about 2001.
Yeah.
And that was around the time you decided, still within the same company, I take it, but part of something else. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this goes back to what you had referred to easily, where, we were a company and then we were bought out by another company, and then we got back into that kind of business. And that's what happened in security. Kelcom had an alarm division up until about 1995, and it was bought out by a large US company that came into Windsor with a big checkbook and bought up a number of the smaller alarm businesses. And eventually, we had a very serious look at that, and it was 5 years after they'd been purchased, or 3 years, something like that. And we were getting complaints from a lot of our customers, of course, because we're multi-product, multi-service. A number of our clients were coming to us saying, look, I really don't care for this new company that has purchased us out of the US. I don't like the fact that my security is being monitored in Dearborn or some other area of Michigan. And we would really prefer that you consider getting back into the security business, or you can pick up your phone system and you can pick up your cell phones. In a roundabout way, we agreed with a lot of our clients who were asking for us to get back in the security business. So Security One was created, and it was right about that 2000 when I saw the handwriting on the wall that the pager business was starting to erode. And I was asked to be part of this new company called Security One, and I was delighted to do so. And I remember just a quick story when I came home and told my wife that I'd be working for a security company, that we should probably consider getting an alarm system for our house. And of course, it was never on our radar. We'd never had a break-in, and we felt, my wife commented to me, do we really need one? And I said, well, I'm going to be selling these systems, so I should be able to speak to it firsthand. And we've had one ever since. And now you fast forward to 4 years ago when we moved, and the first words out of her mouth were, are we going to have a security system at our new home? Because once you have one and you get that peace of mind kind of feeling, you just can't, in my opinion, you don't want to live without it.
So do you do both residential and commercial?
Yeah, my business overall has always been kind of 50-50 of commercial versus residential. So I've done large plants down to just a small 2-bedroom home. We also do things like medical alerts for seniors, and that's a very big part of our business as well. So I found during the pandemic, I probably did more business than homes. There was obviously some reluctance to have a salesperson come into my home during a pandemic. So it probably changed 65-35. And it's probably back to about 65 or 55-45 business versus residential, but we do both, yes.
I suppose you hear some horror stories when people decide to get an alarm after something has happened.
Yes, unfortunately, that's a big motivator. And my wife has told me quite honestly, I don't want to hear stories anymore, because I'm coming in, visiting a couple the night after they've had a break-in where someone broke into their home and pulled the bedroom door closed and burgled their home and left. The police are called the next morning. They find a knife in the driveway, and there's just some stuff that is too close to some of the TV episodes we watch. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but as I shared over the pandemic, the bad guys are not social distancing and are getting into homes and into businesses. And the trend right now is catalytic converters. So we do a lot of camera work. in video work.
So
And,
explain that, expand on that. The catalytic converters, they're after the, I know they're the minerals like rhodium that's worth $200,000 an ounce.
Yeah.
In the catalytic converters, other fine elements.
Yeah.
Explain that. Explain
Well,
that.
and it goes in trends, right? Like 2 years ago, we were having a real challenge with people's air conditioners being destroyed because they were removing copper, and they'd go into a $2,000 or $5,000 air conditioning unit and cause a $2,000 repair because they were able to get 75 bucks worth of copper off of the air conditioning unit. Today, the big trend is catalytic converters, which are found in most trucks, particularly. And the ideal is a medium-sized truck that I can easily get underneath it, and I can cut front and end, remove the catalytic converter. And you're right, they're doing it for some small amount of minerals that are involved in that catalytic converter that they can sell for $100. So the video world has grown to what we call proactive video now, where we can actually talk down to someone from a camera or capture a 10-second clip of a crime in progress. And the police are eager to be told, this is not an alarm going off. This is us telling you we have video confirmation there's someone on site right now. And this technology is leading to arrests.
And so that is a big improvement, because I've always said in the news business, how many murders were prevented. You know, you always see the video mostly on Detroit stations of somebody getting killed or beaten up in a gas station holdup. And I said, well, how did the video save them? But now what you're talking about is a new layer where the police actually, it's almost like CCTV and all the BBC shows now, the police shows, like everybody's always looking, you know, they must have cameras everywhere in England because they seem to be wired to highways and houses and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, cameras are a good deterrent, and it may persuade someone from not doing a crime because I don't want to get caught on camera. But at the same time, typically business owners are coming in on a Monday to see, well, what happened on the weekend? And lo and behold, someone was under my vehicle, stole the catalytic converter, and now I have a souvenir Monday morning of me watching someone do it, but it didn't prevent it from happening. So moving into that next layer, as you're referring to, where it's proactive, now we're involved in real time, and we can alert the authorities that there is someone on site. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. They're not supposed to be there.
And on top of that, there's no, the tape is being, or the recording, I should say, because it's all digital, is being kept at your offices rather than in the store or in the business where somebody can lift the machine out and destroy the evidence.
That's correct. Yeah, this is stored off site, and again, gives us the ability where we can actually send that 10-second clip directly to a police officer, and he can digitally reproduce it in live time, and he knows he's looking for someone in a Red Wing jacket, and he's about 5.5 feet high.
Yeah, not to say that all Red Wing fans are thieves or anything. But how about for, see, I grew up in an era on Dougal Avenue downtown where nobody locked their doors. I mean,
oh, I miss those days.
And, you know, as kids, I think in the 1500 block of Dougal, I was in every house from one end to the other. And sometimes I have dreams where I'm walking into kids' houses from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And today that's unheard of. You got people won't, I noticed during the election, I was knocking on doors for one of the parties, and people wouldn't even come to the door because they'd have a camera like that Ring door ringer there with the
Yep.
camera attached.
And they can communicate that I'm sorry, I can't come to the door right now. Well, they may be in the living room in their pajamas, as opposed to, well, I'm at work right now, but they can certainly communicate directly to say, thanks very much for coming, and give me a call later, or leave the package on the front step. But there is the ability of that communication. And yeah, doorbell cameras are a good thing to have, and they pick up a lot of stuff. Again, it's remarkable where camera technology has taken us. And I miss the days when we could leave doors open. I mean, theoretically, if you put a home alarm system in, you can still leave your doors unlocked. If somebody comes in, they've got 30 seconds to identify who they are or push a code in. But obviously those days are kind of long gone, because break-ins are, there was a time, and I'm going to say I'm dating myself, 2 or 3 years ago, where the number one break-in time was a locked front door mid-afternoon.
Really?
Because our neighborhoods were vacant. Kids were in school and parents were at work. And if you knocked on 10 doors in any particular neighborhood, 9 of them, nobody was home. So I can go up, kick that front door in. And if you have a good look at your front door lock, there's not a lot of wood there to prevent someone from taking a good boot, kicking that door in. And even the retired police officer I have across the street is not going to get out of his chair and get over to the window in the amount of time it takes for me to kick the door in, step in, and close the door. And no one knows the wiser that I'm in your house, and I'm going to spend hours going through your stuff. And ultimately, I'm going to steal your pillowcase with your wife's jewelry and anything else of value. And I'm just going to walk down the street with it.
That is chilling. And I remember when I had my alarm installed, the consultant, it wasn't you, it was a consultant. He said, I put, I think, a 1 minute timer on the alarm going off. And he said, well, most home invasions, you could be dead within 30 seconds. And I thought, no, I'm still going to leave a minute. I need time to get out when I set the alarm. I'm not as fast as I used to be.
I've shared the chilling side of things. Let me suggest, in my own humble professional opinion, that home invasions by and far are usually mistaken identity. The guys that are breaking in for home invasions are not the smartest guys. I'm not going to make a comment about Red Wing jackets, even though I'm a Maple Leaf fan. But typically, some home invasions, unfortunately, are the result of simple misinformation, that they should be breaking into 1234 Main Street, and they broke into 1243 because they got the numbers wrong, and they think they're breaking into a drug dealer's house, and meanwhile it's Bob the barber and his wife. And I'm not to say home invasions don't happen; they're still very scary. But just know, typically it's usually a misunderstanding that they're breaking into the wrong house, which is still scary in itself.
It is, because there have been, for those of us who keep track of the local news, there have been several trials lately of just that, people breaking into the wrong house and injuring the people before they realize they had the wrong place.
Correct.
And a lot of bad things can happen in the interim, because they go in there, maybe they're on drugs or are looking for drugs and cash.
Right.
And they end up with nothing, but they still have to leave a mark on somebody, and it can escalate to bad things.
Yeah.
You have spoken how I'm trying to think of how to put this for homeowners. Is there a package that, like, I don't want to turn this into a commercial. We're talking about technology generally, but is it within the reach of the average homeowner to feel safe in their home, or their property without spending a ton of money. Like a business, that's a business expense that can be part of their business plan and their budget. But for the average person, and we're talking about seniors too, some are on limited income, fixed income. If there's some way they can take advantage of this kind of protection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were times when, if you look back in the late 1900s, they didn't have the technology I have today. So you got to have two guys move into your house for 2 days to run cable all through your house, and alarm systems were $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000, most because of the labor involved. So now fast forward to today's market, everything is wireless. So it doesn't matter how your house is finished. A basic design is we want to put contacts on the doors coming into the house, and then we supplement that with some motions. But keep in mind too, we can get into monitoring your sump pump for water. We can monitor smoke. We can monitor CO. So the sky's the limit to what we can monitor. But basic security systems in most cases are $500 to $1,000 to install, and roughly 40 to 50 bucks a month. And when you put that in consideration to the other utilities you're paying, security systems should certainly be a priority for most people, because what's more important than water and electricity than to keep myself safe and my place safe and my stuff safe? And this has technology now where you can arm it and disarm it. So you can get to the grocery store and think, did I put the alarm system on? Did I lock my door? I can do all of that from my phone.
Yes, and that leads me to a question from the audience here. What are your opinions on how digital has changed regular everyday things, appliances, exercise equipment, smartwatches, etc.?
Well, and that's
where, what you're talking about.
Well, that's a great question, because that is right where we're going with this conversation. Because I mean, just from a monitoring standpoint, I mean, we can literally monitor anything. We used to monitor a lobster tank because the owner needed to know if the oxygen stopped or the motor stopped and the lobsters died in this tank. That's a substantial loss. So we monitor all sorts of things. For homeowners, though, we want to monitor particularly things like doors and windows, and you can adjust lighting, you can adjust your thermostat, you can set your alarm system that when we leave for work, my air conditioning temperature will go up automatically 2 or 3 degrees when I'm not home. So I'm saving a little bit of money, and I forget to go to the thermostat when I leave in the morning, but now I can incorporate that into my program so that my alarm system will do that for me. And if I'm running late, I can turn the lamp on so it looks like I'm home. If I'm coming home from the airport, I can turn the heat on so my house is all toasty when I get home. So yeah, there's technology has taken us to a point where we can incorporate many devices as part of that security system.
And you're basically talking smart homes as well, are you
Yes.
not?
That's exactly what we're talking about, smart home technology.
And where do you see the future of this technology? You put on your clairvoyant hat and tell me what you see.
The next trend is we're getting into voice activation. So right now, for example, Bluetooth, you can set up the newest security system. When you drive into your driveway, the system knows through your cell phone it's you, and it can deactivate the system. So I don't even have to go to my keypad. It's going to send me a notification to tell me, yep, the system was armed. You just disarmed it because you came in your driveway. And now I can stumble in my house with 47 bags and not have to worry about my 30 or 60 seconds to get to a keypad. And now we're seeing voice activation where, it's not far off that we're going to be able to do that through Google and all that sort of stuff, that I can just identify through my watch or something to say, hey, turn the system off, open the drapes, put a light on, put my air conditioning up. It is going to be very similar to the stuff we saw in science fiction years ago.
I'm also thinking uh, you probably already asked this or answered this multiple times, but just for my focus, uh, cameras, how essential, like I have friends who have cameras in the front of their home, because cameras are relatively inexpensive now. They've come
Yes.
down as digital
Yep.
technologies, and they've come down. You can go to Costco, you can go to Best Buy and buy a bunch of cameras, but uh, how how effective are they? For example, night view cameras, like in my backyard, you can't see anything. Uh, like, is it worth the investment to put cameras all around your property?
Well, and I'm a big believer, depending on your circumstances, and there's a vast, wide array of circumstances, whether you've got a psycho bad neighbor, you've got an ex-spouse, things like that, where the police are literally,
Yes.
asking. The next step is to put cameras in. We need to catch this individual coming to vandalize stuff or attempting to get into your home. So cameras have their place. I always share with people that it's a secondary line of defense. The alarm system for a home, in my opinion, is your first line of defense, because it's going to protect you. It's going to protect the contents of your home. Um, and then cameras are secondary. And there's 1,000 ways you can do cameras. You can buy them online. You can buy them at all the major big box stores. The key thing is to deal with a company that can assist you, because tech support can be iffy with some of the stuff you buy online or at the big box, where if I got a problem, now I got to call a 1-800 number and wait for 20 minutes to talk to someone that I can't understand very well. And that can be challenging from a technical standpoint. So the advantage of a Security One is that we're a local company. We've got local service, we've got local tech support, and we're there to support the devices you've purchased. So yeah, I think cameras have their place, but in my opinion, it's your secondary line of defense too.
But they can easily be, like, let's say you go to a reputable company,
Yep.
they can be easily disguised, can they not?
Yeah, I mean, we've done covert applications where you can buy a clock, and it's got a little camera inside it that you would not know that that's a camera, but it has a camera within it, and it's being recorded in the room next door. More of a business application. I mean, there are nanny cameras that you can get that, it could be, it looks like a toy. I mean, a lot of the indoor cameras, I refer to them as an air freshener. It doesn't look like a camera. It looks like a small device that it works through Wi-Fi. So I just have to plug it in, and I can put it anywhere in my home and keep an eye on what's going on.
So in the closing minutes, we're coming down to our last 5 minutes. What advice would you give to seniors or anyone, any consumer, wants to get started in this kind of, installing this kind of business?
I think the best advice I would give is don't become complacent. You need to be proactive. Don't think that, well, that'll never happen to me. And whatever reasons you have, I can assure you, I've been in homes of retired police officers. I've been in homes where they have police officers that live in the 4 houses around them, and police officers' homes get burgled. So no matter where you live, and I used to have a preconceived idea of these are the bad areas in Windsor, and I get calls from every neighborhood. I've been in homes in every neighborhood in Windsor, Essex County, and you just need to be proactive yourself. Use some more lighting outside. Lighting is great to protect your home, but ultimately don't feel intimidated to have someone like myself come in and just talk to you about some of the devices that can help you stay in your home longer. We didn't talk too much about medical alerts, but we now have GPS units that work in your car. They work in the grocery store. And if you have a health problem, if you lock yourself out of your car, anything like that, you can hit a button and a voice comes to you on this device to say, what can I do to help you? So naturally, my marketing department wanted me to suggest that anybody that mentions this podcast or this webinar, we're prepared to offer $100 off any service that you might get. Don't, there's your commercial part, but don't be hesitant to ask questions and get professional advice on keeping yourself safe. And you don't have to buy stuff. Sometimes it's just enhancing lighting and trimming bushes around windows. I always remember one of my favorite sales was visiting a retired couple in Riverside, and their security system was on their back patio. They bought the biggest dog dish they could find, and they wrote the name Killer on it. And that was their security system.
A lot of people, we still got a few minutes to talk. If you want to talk about medical alert, I find that relevant as well.
Well, especially for seniors. I mean, a lot of seniors want to live in their home. And if they're living by themselves, family members are nervous because everybody has heard the story where I call my mother every day at noon and have a conversation. And then if my mother were to take a fall at 2 p.m. that afternoon and she couldn't get up, it would be noon the next day before I could understand she's not answering the phone. And I get there, and you don't want to be stuck on the floor for any indefinite period of time. So we encourage seniors in particular to get a medical alert because it allows you to stay home longer, and it really provides peace of mind for your family members to know that if there's an issue, you've got immediate, it's like calling 911, but it's like you just hit one button and a voice comes on within seconds to say, hey, Rob, what's up? What do you need help with? And if it's a medical thing that, even if you can't speak, it's got GPS. It tells us what address you're at and where we can find you. And these medical alerts can literally save your life.
Well, Mark, thanks for being with us tonight. I'm just going to give a little promo to our next production in a week. We're still sort of putting it together. It's going to take a different turn, which is the arts, and we're putting together a panel of different artists from different artsy parts of society, and I can't give any names right now because we haven't confirmed everybody, but I promise it'll be interesting. And once again, Mark, thanks for being with us again tonight. It's been illuminating, and I'm really pleased that we had you on because you're a great representative of both technology as it is and how it will be, and security and medical alert. And thanks for being with us tonight.
Well, it's great to talk to you, Rob, and great just to look back on a 35-year career and see how things have evolved immensely, and cannot imagine where things will be in 35 years from today.
Okay, thank you. And good night to everybody. See you again next Monday. And make sure you like us on Facebook because that'll help us continue this series into the future.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Mark.